dude, yes.
All right. This week on the Golden Age of Gear, we're actually talking about something from a little while ago, and we're going to talk about early 90s Gibson Les Pauls.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Ooh. So we're going to talk about the quote-unquote good era, or good wood era of the Les Paul.
Okay.
So, I wouldn't say I'm a Les Paul guy. I would say that I love all guitars. And for a long time, I always thought Les Pauls look cool. I'm a huge Slash fan. I am the most, like, what would you call it? Like vanilla mainstream style guitarist ever, where I like every, like, hard rock tune from the 80s and 90s. So I grew up on, Led Zeppelin and
Boston, yes.
Guns N' Roses. No, yes. No to yes.
Steely Dan.
Well, kind of, but way later. So, but Gibson Les Pauls.
Hall & Oates.
Can you give every band that I'm not actually going to, like, that I know
Miley
like
Cyrus.
2 songs by? Oh, no, that's better. Yeah.
Right. I forgot you have little kids.
Yeah, so always been a Les Paul fan, loved how they look. My favorite is actually a gold top. So I went out when I finally had a little bit of money. I went out and I bought myself a new Les Paul Traditional in 2009. And I could not get that guitar to stay in tune. It felt horrible. And I was like, this sounds so good when it's in tune, but it's a fight to play it and doesn't stay in tune. And, I kind of, fell victim to what everybody else does around Les Pauls of like, well, they're impossible to keep the G string in tune, but, but they sound amazing. So just deal with it for whenever it stays in tune. Right. Mm-hmm. And I quickly kind of became disenfranchised with it. And then over the years, so I kind of stopped looking at Les Pauls and I started playing a lot of Paul Reed Smith stuff because I was like, hey, this is kind of like a Les Paul, but stays in tune and feels better. But there's still something about Les Pauls that they just sound a little bit more, I should say a little less refined, right? Like a little more raw sounding, to use lame guitar buzzwords. So I kind of started watching to see if I could find some other ones. And when Dorian, who is our lovely media director here, who was running our cameras for us, started working for us, he immediately was like, oh, you need a 91 Les Paul. And I was like, dude, get out of here with that shit. Like, I do not buy into the hype of, like, certain years are better than others. And I'm happy to admit I was completely wrong, and I have never played a early 90s Les Paul that wasn't awesome. Les Paul standard. So Dorian, what sold me on it was Dorian brought in, would you bring in like 3 of them? And he brings in his guitars and he's like, here, try this. I sit down, I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like, it feels great. I prefer the 60s neck. I know you don't care as much about neck profiles, but I prefer like kind of the thinner neck over the 50s wide fat. And all the necks were like kind of slimmer. They all stayed in tune. So every guitar he handed me, I was just like, oh, what year is this one? He's like, 91. What's this one? Oh, 91. What year's this one? Oh, 95. I'm like, shit, all right. So
are they more expensive? Like, are they, when you find them, are they pricey?
They're a little bit now, but not bad. Like, I bought this one during the pandemic when everything was like way overinflated.
Yeah.
And this one, I think I paid $2,400 US at the time.
Okay.
They're a little more now.
Like 9,000 Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dorian, you just bought a black one, right? That was around like 3,500 Canadian? 32 Canadian. So yeah, still probably around like 2,500 US.
Yeah.
So close to the price of a new one. Mm-hmm. So I bought this, and it's the first 91 that I bought. And to be honest, it has been rock solid. I hate the color, just to be completely honest. It's kind of funny. When I was younger and I wanted Les Pauls, this was the color that I wanted. And now that I'm older, I can't stand it.
Yeah.
But it was the only one I could find during the pandemic, and I just lost patience and was like, I'm buying that.
I'll take it. Yeah.
And I removed the pickguard, like you should do to every Les Paul, because they never should have had one to start. Like you could take that off.
Disagree.
You could take that off, and you would see all that gorgeous checking, and instead of having that horrible piece of plastic on there, Joe. You know.
Yeah, well, I'll fight you after this.
You can. And when I beat your ass, I'm going to take that pickguard off.
I'll Rochambeau you for it.
So yeah. So the kind of theory behind it, and like, have you heard of Goodwood era from Gibson?
Nope.
Okay, so Goodwood era started around like 1990 and runs through to like 96, 97, somewhere around there. And the theory behind it is Gibson opened the custom shop in the later 90s, right? Dorian knows this a little better. Mid 90s? So
Early 90s.
What's that?
93.
Okay. So when Gibson opened the custom shop, they transferred all of the kind of best woods that they had out of the main production line and away from the Les Paul standards to go to Gibson's custom shop.
Right.
So that's why they'll claim that the early 90s ones are good wood era, because the best woods that went to the custom shop were just part of all of the standard production builds.
Right.
Full disclosure, no idea if any of that's true. Somebody from Gibson, drop us a comment below and tell us if I'm completely full shit. So
Yeah, somebody from Gibson's for sure gonna be like, yeah, we use bad wood.
Yes.
On the normal guitars.
Yes. Well, I didn't say bad wood era. Maybe it should be called the amazing wood era, because they transferred the most amazing woods to the custom shops. You're like, still bullshit. Yeah.
Marketing guy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like I kind of didn't believe it until I bought one. And I bought this guitar and I got it. It was at, I think it was like called House of Guitar or Atlanta House of Guitar or something like that.
Okay.
But it came from Georgia. I pulled it, I'm not a word of a lie, I pulled it out of the box, pulled it out of the case, in tune. And I'm like, well, that's a great sign. If it can come from Georgia up to Winnipeg and still be in tune, that's amazing. And I've taken this to almost every like NAMM show or like, any US events that we go to. I take this and I take a Schecter Stratocaster with me. And it always stays in tune. It rarely ever needs a setup. It's just an unbelievably solid guitar. And Dorian's have all been the same. And then I started going like, okay, well, let's see if others are like that. You wanna, I mean, it's not in open tuning and it's got baby strings on it, but
That's okay.
Well, actually here, I'll leave it plugged in so that you can play it. Also, the pickups in it.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah. You're like,
I kind of forget how to.
You're like, it's tuned half.
Yeah.
Tuned down a half and with like 11, so it's like spaghetti to you, but.
It's nice to play a guitar that doesn't hurt, Yeah, that feels great. Sounds great.
So then I was in Nashville this past year, and I had been telling, Rob Baker, right?
Yep. I don't know him super well, but yeah.
So Rob and I went to Carter Vintage, and I had been telling him, like, I was going guitar store, hunting, and I said, like, hey, want to come, come check things out. And he's like, well, what are you looking for? And I'm like, well, I said, I want to go check out, see if there's any 91 Les Pauls kicking around. And he's like, what? Why? And I'm like, well, so I give him the kind of story about my introduction to them from Dorian. And he's like, okay. I said, and Rumble Seat Nashville had a 91 Firebird. And I kind of came up with this idea that I was like, or I shouldn't say came up with this idea, but I kind of got it stuck in my head that I'm like, I wonder if all the Gibsons from the early 90s are awesome, right? Like, is it just Les Pauls or is it SGs? Is it, the Thunderbird or the Firebird? Yeah, Explorers. So Rumbleseed had a 91 Firebird that I went to try, and it was amazing. It was too expensive. I didn't buy it. It was like $4,500 or something. I'm like, I don't own a Firebird. I would love to. But
Yeah,
I'm like,
they're cool guitars.
But I'm like, yeah, I'm still stuck in the age where guitars are like really nice guitars are $2,500, which I know is like below the starting price of almost all really nice guitars now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, anyway, we went over to Carter's, and Rob pointed at this guitar. He's like, check this out. He's like, have you ever seen like a finish like this on a Les Paul? And I'm like, no. And I like looked at the headstock and I'm like, what year is it? And I flip it over and it says 91, and I just grabbed it. I'm like, 91. I'm like, you have to try it. So he's like, oh yeah. So he sits down and he plays it, and he's like, dude, this is awesome. And he played it in the store for 20 minutes because it was on consignment. And me being the good Winnipeg boy that I am was like, hey, could you call the guy and I'd give him X for it. Can you see if you take X? Because I can't pay what the sticker says because I'm a bastard. And we had to wait for the guy to respond. And anyway, Rob played it for like 20 minutes, and he's like, this guitar hasn't gone out of tune. And Rob is a big Les Paul guy. Like that's his main. He's got a 79 Kalamazoo Les Paul. And he's like, my other Les Pauls would all have gone way out by now. And I'm like, all the 91s that I've played are like this. And I have a 92 Standard that actually lives in our storage locker in Nashville, so that when I'm down there, if we're doing events, I don't have to fly with a guitar. It's the only guitar that I leave there. And everybody who plays it is just like, holy shit, like, what is this guitar? And I'm like, it's a 92 Les Paul Standard. So, I mean, there's slight differences between these. That one ended up, I sent Dorian a picture of it because Dorian was flying into Nashville to shoot some video. And I said, hey, check out this Les Paul. Like, what do you think? I'm like, you know more about these. I'd never seen like the, what do they call it? Like the bridge with the fine tuning. Is it the Tune-o-matic or no?
No, that's just the standard bridge.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So it's the same as like what's on Lucille.
Right.
Like with the fine tuning system. And, I sent him a picture of it, and he didn't reply to me. And I'm like, oh, he must not have thought it was cool. And the next day I was like, man, I'm surprised you didn't say anything about that 91 Les Paul. He's like, what? What 9? And I'm like, wow. So I show him pictures like, I didn't see this. He's like, how much is that? He's like, those are, I think it's one of 400, like some special edition that was built in 91, and they're like $3,500. And I think I paid like $2,000 or $2,100 for it at Carter's. So as soon as he told me that, I hadn't bought it yet.
Right.
As soon as he told me that, I like texted the guy at Carter's. I'm like, hold that guitar for me. I'll be back today. Pick it up. And I went, straight back and bought it. And took the pick card off immediately, like all Les Pauls should be. See, doesn't that look so much better?
I think it's like Burt Reynolds without a mustache to me.
I will give you credit that I've shot a bunch of like little reels about like asking people like pickard or no pickard. Yeah. And I haven't launched any of them on social media because I'm lazy. And no one has come up with a better analogy than that for why the pickguard should be there. Burt Reynolds.
Like nobody wants to see Burt Reynolds without a mustache. Get out of here.
Nice. So I kind of now am constantly on the hunt for early 90s Gibsons. And to me, I think that the whole idea of the Goodwood era, whether there's truth to the fact that they transferred better woods to the custom shop or not, I feel like the attention to detail at Gibson, like we kind of talked about with, smaller builders and luthiers in one of the other podcasts, I think that the attention to detail was just higher, and the quality control was just higher.
Yeah.
So they built better guitars then than what they built, like say, well, let's say my 2009 Gold Top Les Paul that I was talking about. That year wasn't great, obviously.
Yeah.
So I feel like everything that I've been able to buy from the early 90s has been awesome.
Cool.
I
remember they did a run of these natural maple top Les Pauls like in the in the early aughts or something, or early 2000s.
Yep.
Or maybe it was in 91 and I just didn't realize, but...
What were you, like 3?
No. In the early 2000s, I would
No,
have been...
91.
Oh, 91? I was 4.
Yeah, see. I started playing in 1990.
What were you, 2?
10.
Oh, yeah, right.
I am older than you. Yeah.
Old balls over here.
I know. It's okay, Dorian's older than me, so it makes me feel better about life.
79?
I'm 80.
80.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool guitar.
Yeah. And the necks are different on these. Like that one's a little fatter than this one. But it's not.
You hear that? Just absolute step-tag guitar playing I just did.
That sounds exactly like what I was playing before, though.
Whoops.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I've never been one to believe in like the year thing like I was talking about, but early 90s guitars have not disappointed me. Same with, I didn't have any experience with like 58, 59, 60 Les Pauls and like the idea of like real PAF pickups.
Right.
Until the last 3 or 4 years, I've gotten to play a very small handful of guitars like that. And I've played a few like that play like absolute shit.
Yeah.
But the good ones from like
are remarkable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like enough to make you go like every other Les Paul I've ever played sounds
It's never
terrible.
been so good that I was like, yeah, I want to spend 6 figures on a guitar. I've never played one, and I have played some good ones. Like I could wrap my head around, if I had it, which I don't, of course. But I could wrap my head around dropping like 15 or 20 grand on a guitar if I had the money like available. I just couldn't imagine myself dropping more.
So I never have.
But I'm not a collector, like that's not what I do. So
I got to play Tom Bukovac's 58 Burst, and I bought actually the Super Reverb that's behind you from him years ago. We were in Nashville doing all of the video stuff for the Sean's Tilt Overdrive pedal.
yeah,
And he had that for sale, and I don't use them very often, but I love old Fender amps just like you do. Mm-hmm. So our good buddy Owen Barry told me, he's like, yeah, Tom's selling the 65 Super Reverb. Are you interested? I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't have one of those. I'd love to check it out. So we got to go over to his house and got to try the amp, and he brought out his Burst, and he let all of us play it. And I think he said he paid, I don't remember exactly how much, but it was close to $200,000 for the guitar.
right.
And for the longest time, I was like, why would you ever spend that kind of money on a guitar? And probably sometime in the last year, I realized so I own another company where we do screen printing, right? And the machines that I have in that company, I have spent millions of dollars to buy. And the tools that we use to create a product there, like one press is $150,000.
Right.
And I got thinking about it in terms of that. And I was like, for a guy like Tom, I'm like, if this is your tool that, makes you the happiest to play on, and it is how you make your living and you make enough money from that tool to be able to be profitable on it, I was like, I understand why you would do it if that was your life. Now, that's not saying that you can't have, a $20,000 guitar or even a $2,000 or $3,000 guitar that will also get you there and that you'll feel, just as good with it. But that was the first time that I kind of connected. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, if you look at it as your job and as the tools that you use for your job, I understand why people would do it. I would never do it because I don't make my money from playing guitar.
Yeah.
So I make money from people playing guitar.
Yeah.
But I would never be that guy. But I did kind of understand it a little more, and it was like, yeah, I could see why And if you are a collector,
Yeah.
right? Like the fact is, they're not making any more of them, and they're not coming down in price.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So if you've got $250,000 or $400,000 that you want to park and hope that it turns into, 20 or 30% more over the next 5 to 10 years, then, have at her. I get paranoid about, like I have quite a few guitars, and a lot of amps, like a lot of stuff that's not Revs. And I started thinking more and more about like what it costs me to either maintain or insure all of the shit that I have. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, ugh, I need to have less stuff because I don't use it. And I'm probably like you a little bit. I know you don't collect, but that when you first hear about something, you're like, oh, that's cool. I want to have that. I want to buy that. And then you buy it. And then you're like, I don't actually have a real use for this.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool that I have it. So, I say that as I say that I also, like if you have a 91 Firebird that you're looking to sell, drop it in the comments.
And if you don't have 400 grand for a 59, go ahead and find yourself a 91.
Yeah,
Les
if you,
Paul.
I would say this, Gibson will hate me for saying this, but I'm not affiliated with Gibson, so who cares? Great guitars. A new Les Paul is going to run you right now, $2,500, $3,000 US, somewhere around there for a standard, I think. Because I think they're like $4,000+ in Canada. I would honestly go buy a used, if you could get a used early 90s for the same price as a new one, go buy the early 90s one. So, but.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
I said that in the last episode too. Dang. I'm reusing my jokes.
Well, it's all right. I only have 2 or 3. Like, so.
Yeah, we heard one of them earlier.
I know, it wasn't good. It's a good thing I'm not a comedian. So, yeah. So that's it. Let us know in the comments what you guys think about the quote-unquote Goodwood era, or like if there's a specific year that you know of in anything. Like, is there a great year of Strats, Tellys, whatever it is? I'm always super curious about, like, is there truth to any of that stuff, right? Like, is there truth to, for some reason, this, 79 Strat is killer. Like the oversized headstock made it amazing,
Yeah.
Anything like that. I'd love to hear about it. And yeah, if you have one, I'd love to try it sometime. So just invite me over to your house, and
We'll be there.
yeah, Joe and I will come.
We'll bring Oreo cookies.
And we'll tell you whether or not your guitar sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to tell you.
Yes. Well, thank you. You can enjoy one of the cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if your guitar sucks, you only get one cookie.
Yeah.
That's how
So.
we'll tell you.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
91 Les Pauls, everybody. This has
bet.
been the golden age of gear. Derek Eastfeld, Jory Lambert. Catch you next time.